Hello, and welcome to episode number 2 of KRAD COVID readings. Little bit of housekeeping on episode number 1 before we move on to number 2. The story that Ren and I read last time was called Brotherly Love, and it appeared originally in Tales from Dragon Precinct, which is a short story collection that was originally released in 2013 and is currently available from the fine folks at eSpec Books, along with all the other books in the Precinct series, which is a fantasy police procedural, as you may have guessed from the story. There are 5 novels: Dragon Precinct, Unicorn Precinct, Goblin Precinct, Griffin Precinct, and Mermaid Precinct. There's the short story collection, Tales from Dragon Precinct, and coming in the future are Phoenix Precinct, Manticore Precinct, and another short story collection imaginatively titled More Tales from Dragon Precinct. So that's coming up in that. For this episode, for episode number 2, I'm going to be doing another original story in a setting I've written a lot in this case, the Tales of Cassie Zukav, Weirdness Magnet. I've written a whole lot of stories with Cassie, only short fiction so far. A bunch of them were collected in a collection called Ragnarok and Roll, Tales of Cassie Zukav, Weirdness Magnet, which is out from Plus One Press. The story I'm going to read right now is not in that collection, but it was originally sold to a website called Story of the Month Club, which was a monthly... you subscribe to that and you would get a new story every month. The story I did appeared in October for Halloween. It was sort of meant as a Halloween story. The Cassie Zukav stories take place, they're urban fantasy stories that take place in Key West, Florida, which is a great place to have urban fantasy stories if you've ever been there. And Cassie is a part-time scuba diver and scuba instructor and dive master, and she also works at a bed and breakfast where she also lives. And she spends a lot of her time at one of the local bars, like you do in Key West. The Cassie Zukav stories are full of Norse mythology, rock and roll music, scuba diving, folklore, and beer drinking, not necessarily in that order. The story, each year, Story of the Month Club would collect all the stories into a single book. This, William Did It, which is the story I'll be reading shortly, is in A Baker's Dozen of Magic, which is edited by Jessica Bronner, who was in charge of Story of the Month Club while it existed. So, anyway, this is the story. It is called William Did It. It is actually based on a Key West legend about Robert the Doll. Except in this case, I called him William. But it is based on that. So, here it is. William Did It. A Tale of Cassie Zukav, Weirdness Magnet, by Keith R.A. DeCandido. I was working the desk at the Bottroff House Bed and Breakfast Inn when Rashida Corey and Hooray Jones both came in wearing wet bathing suits and carrying large canvas bags with their diving gear. They both dropped their bags, walked up to me at the desk, got down on their knees, and said, "I'm sorry." Hooray added, "You were right, we were wrong, you got to forgive us." I laughed. "Crappy dive at Azakar, huh?" "Oh," Rashida said, "it would have had to improve by several orders of magnitude before it would be as good as crappy." "You know," I said to the tops of their heads as they were still down on their knees, "it seems like only yesterday that I was telling you not to go to Azukar, that they cater to tourists who don't know jack shit about diving, that you'd be better off diving with Sea Clips, and you two said that I was just saying that because I'm a dive master for Sea Clips, and besides you'd made the reservations before you flew down from Chicago, and you'd lose your deposit." Hooray finally got to her feet. "Yeah, we should have just eaten the damn deposit. That was the bullshittiest dive ever. I mean, Key West ain't Hawaii or nothing, but damn. No way the diving's that shitty here." "It isn't," I said. "At least not when we do it. By the by, we're cheaper than Azakar, too." Rashida nodded in agreement, though she was still on her knees. "Cassie, may we please set up a dive with you for tomorrow?" I smiled. "Already booked you two on my 1 p.m. dive." Now Rashida got up, too. "Really?" I was pretty confident that Azakar would suck the wet farts out of dead pigeons. Wincing, Rashida said, "Wonderful. Now that image is in my head." "Come on," Hooray said, laughing. "Let's wash the stink of Azakar off and then get out and hit the bars. I want to drink enough to forget this shit. The first thing, definitely. Rashida gave her friend a nod, and they both started toward the large doorway that led to the rooms in the main home. Thanks again, Cassie. My pleasure. Hey, don't forget to make Mayor Fred's one of the stops you make on your bar hopping. Giving a wry smile, Rashida stopped, turned, and asked, Do you work there as well? No, I said, though it was a legit question. Lots of folks on Key West worked several jobs. But I just had the 2 part-time dive master at Sea Clips, which actually paid, and part-time helper around the Bottroff house, which paid in providing room and board. But it's the best bar in Old Town. They've got an amazing beer selection, and the house band there is the best on the island. We will consider it, Rashida said, as they left the main room and headed off to the room they were sharing upstairs. I hung out at the desk until the 2 couples who were taking the 2 rooms in one of the cottages out back showed up to check in. Fantasy Fest had started, just like it did the last week of October every year, and the B&B was booked for the next 10 days. The Halloween celebration was actually the thing that convinced me to stay on the island a year ago, after my 1-week stay had extended to several months. I went from spending all my money at Sea Clips taking dives to letting them pay me to run them, and convinced the owner of the Bottroff house to make me the Lord High Everything Else by revamping her website and decorating the place with my underwater photography, both of which increased business tremendously. Well, okay, it was mostly the website. Seriously, that sucker hadn't been updated since the mid-90s. Once I got the 2 new couples checked in, I locked the front door. All the clients had keys to that door. And then went to my own room on the top floor of another of the cottages out back to change, wash up, and head over to Mayor Fred's saloon on Green Street. By the time I went out, the sun had already gone down, so I missed the daily sunset celebration on the boardwalk, and it meant that Duval Street, the main drag of Old Town, was packed to the gills with people in costumes. What was normally a 5-minute walk took the better part of half an hour, mostly so I wouldn't get in the way of all the people taking pictures and or video of the people playing dress-up. Some of the costumes were pretty damned impressive, too. Others were just thrown together, and others were just excuses to wear as little clothing as possible. I didn't give a damn one way or the other. Though, as a heterosexual woman, I personally was more interested in these scantily clad men than these scantily clad women, but mostly I just wanted them to keep moving so I could get to Mayor Fred's. In addition to all the official events, the coronation of the Conch King and Queen, burlesque shows, contests, auctions, theme parties, and so on, each bar had its own thing that they did during the week. In the case of Mayor Fred's, this year they decided to do Pink Week. A lot of the fest events are charity-based, and Ihor, the manager of the bar, had lost his aunt to breast cancer. So during Fest, all the bar's profits were going to BCRF, plus everyone was encouraged to wear pink. So when I'd gone back to the room to change, it was into a tank top, shorts, and flip-flops, all hot pink, all of which I bought last week. When I finally got into Mayor Fred's, it was a sea of pale pink, dark pink, hot pink, salmon, fuchsia, coral, salmon. It was 50 shades of pink in there. I truly thought I was going to go blind. The only break in pink were the people in costumes, but it was mostly just a whole lot of pink. The house band, 1812, was on stage, plowing through a rendition of Eric Clapton's Sunshine of Your Love. I was stunned to see that all 4 of them were also in pink. I figured Bobby Malevsky, the guitarist, and Ginny Blake, the drummer, would go for it, and they did. But Jana Neha, who played keyboards, guitar, or whatever else was needed, was the textbook definition of goth chick, and bassist Chet Smith never varied from his wardrobe of unbuttoned button-down shirt, drawstring pants, Birkenstocks, and sunglasses. He didn't tonight either, but all of them were pink. Hot damn. As for Jaina, she looked hilarious, even going so far as to tie pink ribbons amidst her dreadlocks. The place was packed, of course, so I couldn't get my usual table by the ficus tree. Mayor Fred's was built around the ficus, which was Key West's hanging tree in the 19th century. It's also a root of Yggdrasil, the world tree of Norse myth, which I discovered this past April when I stopped Loki from destroying it, which I did with help from Odin. Did I mention my life is weird? Instead, I sidled up to the bar, near where Larry was sitting nursing a glass of Coke. Larry had been coming to this bar since Hemingway was a regular. He's an immortal. Long story. "What's the word, Cassie?" he asked me, just like he always did. And I always had an answer. Sometimes it was hard to come up with the right word, but today was a gimme. "Pink," I replied with a grin. "You can say that again," Larry muttered. "Didn't think you'd go for this nonsense. Come to think of it, don't think I've ever seen you in pink before." Before I could answer, Ihor came over to me, dressed in a pink t-shirt. "The usual?" "Depends," I said. "Please tell me the beer isn't pink." "The beer isn't pink," Ihor said solemnly. "Then yes, the usual." Ihor chuckled and added, "Just be grateful you don't drink wine." I snorted as he went off to pour my beer from the tap. Then I looked down at Larry, who was way shorter than me, and said, "Mostly I could give a shit about the cutesy gags to attract the tourists, but my cousin had a mastectomy last year. For this, I'll wear pink, even if it does make me look paler than usual." "Yeah, it isn't exactly your color. Pink's for girls. You're a woman." I gave him a sidewise look. "Thanks, I think?" "Come on, kiddo, you're taller than most of the men in here. Girly ain't a word I'd use on you." He was exaggerating a little. Plenty of men in here were taller than my 5'11", but I also agreed with him, so I said, "I'll drink to that." Just as I said that, Ihor put my drink down on a napkin in front of me, enabling me to put my words into action. I clinked my beer mug against Larry's soda glass. His immortality was contingent on never falling asleep, so he stuck to caffeine and sugar, and we each gulped. Like usual, people moved in and out of the bar as time went on. After 1812 finished a set, there was a huge exodus, so I was able to snag the table by the ficus. The band members are friends of mine, so a couple of them joined me for a bit. As soon as they got back up on stage, a mess of people moved to the dance floor area up front. The minute Bobby began the riff to Aerosmith's Walk This Way, they all started dancing. Right when they finished that song, I saw Rashida and Hare walk in, and I waved my arms back and forth to get their attention. They land-sharked through the crowd to join me at the table, and Hare stared at me like I was insane. "There is a shit ton of pink up in here." That's Mayor Fred's theme for Fest, breast cancer. "That is the only time anyone should be wearing pink." Rashida frowned. "I like pink. And how often do I consult your ass on fashion?" With a mock pout, Rashida said, "Less often than you should." Hare snorted. "I need a drink. We left the Hog's Breath because wasn't nobody coming over to take our order, and the bar was too damn crowded." I was going to point out that based on the whiff I got from her breath, she'd already had plenty to drink, but before I could say anything, Adina, one of the waitresses, came by. Her usual white Mayor Fred's t-shirt and black shorts were replaced with pink versions of both. "Hey, Cass." "Hey, Adina. Can you refill my beer and get my friends here whatever they want?" "You got margaritas?" Hare asked. Adina grinned. "It's written into the city charter that all Key West bars have to serve them." Hare nodded. "With salt." "Just a Coke for me," Rashida said. Adina nodded and weaved her way back through the crowd toward the bar. Staring at Adina's retreating form, Hare spoke with admiration. "That was fast service." "This is the bonus of sitting with a regular," I said with a grin. 1812 finished up Congo's Come With Me Now, and then dove right into Hazy Shade of Winter, but they did it in the style of the Hard Rock and Bangles cover of the song, rather than the Simon and Garfunkel original. Hare practically leapt to her feet. "I fucking love this song!" And she ran out onto the dance floor. Rashida was smiling indulgently. "Mind if I ask a question?" She chuckled. "How did a devout Muslim girl from Burr Ridge get to be best friends with a lapsed Baptist girl who barely got out of Cabrini Green alive?" I chuckled. "You get that a lot, huh?" Rashida nodded. "We were assigned to be roommates our freshman year of college at Penn State, and we got on very well. We stayed roommates for all 4 years. Since we were both from Chicago, we'd road trip home for the holidays. I had a car. And after graduation, we got an apartment together, since we already knew we could live together. I love how much Hare lives life to the fullest. It's a joy to watch and experience." Then she smiled ruefully. "And I'm here to clean up the inevitable mess." I nodded. "Long as you're both happy." "Oh, very much. I couldn't ask for a better friend. She's always been there for me. Far more than most. She got kind of a haunted look when she said those last 4 words, but I didn't pry. I only just met the woman, and she'd be gone in a few days, never to be seen again. That was the joy of living and working in a tourist town. Hooray stayed on the floor through both Hazy Shade and Pink's Bad Influence, the presence of which on the set list was pretty much an inevitability this week, before coming back to find her margarita waiting for her. As she sat down, Hooray took a long gulp from her glass. "That is one fine motherfucking drink." She took another sip and then smiled. "This motherfucker's our 5th bar tonight, and this is the first band that didn't suck ass." Frowning, Rashida said, "I liked the guy in Irish Kevin's. He was funny, but he needed to tune that motherfucking guitar." Rashida leaned over to me. "That's 3 motherfuckers. She's definitely having a good time." I chuckled. "Told you. Damn motherfucking straight. You ain't led us wrong yet, Cassie." Hooray raised her glass. "To Cassie." "And what's your last name?" "Zukav." "To Cassie motherfucking Zukav, best motherfucking Key West tour guide ever." Rashida lifted her Coke glass. "I'll drink to that." We all sipped our drinks, then Rashida turned to Hooray. "We should ask her." I frowned. "Ask me what?" "Yeah, all right." Hooray took another sip of her margarita, and then said, "I want to take the ghost tour. That'll take us to see William the Doll at the East Martello Museum, plus all that other ghost shit." "I'd rather go to the museum when it's actually open and see the rest of it," Rashida said. "Yeah, but I want to see William the Doll when it's all creepy after hours at night and shit. And I want to see all the Civil War items and the sculptures and such." That just got Hooray to roll her eyes. "You want my advice?" I asked. They both nodded. "Go during the day. The ghost tour is all bullshit." Hooray looked at me like I was nuts. "Yeah, I know it's bullshit. It ain't like ghosts is real, but I like hearing the stories." I hesitated for 2 reasons. First off, the ghost tour wasn't bullshit because ghosts weren't real. It was bullshit because they got it all wrong. In particular, they never drove by the Botroff house, even though the ghost of Captain Jeremiah Botroff had been haunting the place for the century and a half since he died. I was one of the few who could see or hear him, so he's sorta kinda been my roommate. Anyhow, the point is, the weirdness on the island's actually weirder than the tour guides lead you to believe. But it probably wasn't the best idea to share that with Hooray and Rashida. They'd be going home to Chicago in a few days. The second reason why I hesitated was that one of the tour guides was a regular at Sea Cliffs, a sweet woman named Becky. And the more people took the tour, the more money she made, and I felt bad taking money out of her pocket. It was because of Becky that I actually took the tour in the first place about 9 months ago. And while she did a great job in her role play as one of the alleged ghosts they talk about on the tour, I thought the tour itself was way too over the top and silly, especially since I'd already met one of the local ghosts. Still, I stuck by my advice. Look, you can hear the stories all sorts of places, but the ghost tour is way overpriced, and you already got gouged by Azakar for a shitty dive. Rashida's right. East Martello's got all kinds of great stuff. The admission's a hell of a lot cheaper than the stupid tour, and you'll still get to see William the Doll. Trust me, he's plenty scary in daylight, too. Rashida just stared at Hooray, who was actually pouting. Then 1812 went into Jimi Hendrix's Fire, and Hooray leapt to her feet and went back to the dance floor. Gulping down the rest of her Coke, Rashida sat back in her seat with a triumphant smile on her face. "We're going to the museum." I didn't hear her agree to it. She never does admit it when she loses the argument. Mind you, when she wins, I never hear the end of it. But if she gets the pouty face and stops talking about it, or changes the subject, or goes off to dance, then I've won. And I'm content to bask in my victories without gloating. Adina swung by and asked if we needed refills, which we all did. Hooray stayed on the dance floor through the next 4 songs. I noticed that a guy was dancing very close to her. He had a goatee and sunglasses, wore a white t-shirt and jeans, and had a glowy blue circle in the center of his chest under the shirt that was supposed to be the arc reactor thingy that Tony Stark had in the Iron Man and Avengers movies. I didn't recognize him, so he was probably a tourist. She seemed to go along with his close dancing at first, but it became pretty clear to me after a while that she was trying to move away from him. Unfortunately, it wasn't very clear to him, and he kept moving with her. In the middle of Kashmir, Hooray suddenly came back to the table. Creepy Tony Stark followed her over. Rashida tensed right up as soon as she saw Hooray move. As she sat down, creepy Tony leaned over and said, "It was fun dancing with you, babe." "Yeah, whatever." A sensible, non-creepy person would have read the incredibly cold and dismissive tone and walk away. This guy wasn't that. "What the hell, bitch? I was just paying you a compliment." I stood up and went around to the other side of the guy, who was about an inch shorter than me. "Hi, you're pissing off my friend. Stop, please." Creepy Tony turned around and looked pissed until he realized he had to look up to see my face. "Yeah, okay. Fine, just trying to be nice, fucking bitches." He walked off and got lost in the sea of pink. "Thanks, Cass," Hooray said. "He was getting handsy, and I don't do that shit." "No problem." I sat back down. Fest and spring break always bring out the asshats. We wound up staying until closing. I introduced Hooray and Rashida to the members of the band, and Chet even hit on Rashida. She politely declined, and he shrugged and moved on, which was good because Hooray looked like she was ready to beat on Chet for even considering it. Chet, of course, was oblivious. Bass player, you know. The three of us stumbled back to the Botroff house together. Well, Hooray and I stumbled. Rashida kind of herded us into a straight line. The next day, the three of us went to Stock Island, the next island in from Key West, to see clips. I drove in Rocinante, my battered old Ford F-150 pickup, and they followed in their rental. They were both excellent divers, with good equipment. The other four people on the dive were two couples who had been diving with me all week, and they specifically requested a wreck dive. So we went to the Duane, a Coast Guard ship that the Coasties had deliberately sunk back in the 80s to create an artificial reef. Hooray and Rashida had never actually done any wreck diving, so they were game, and everyone had a wonderful time. Afterward, they joined me for a terrible meal at the Waterfront, the dive that shares a parking lot with Sea Clips. Diving is hungry-making, and wreck diving even more so, especially if you've never done it. After a dive like that, you'll eat any shit put in front of you, and the Waterfront proves it regularly with a rather impressive selection of shit to so put. "This is the worst fucking hamburger I ever ate in my life," Hooray declared after devouring it in 4 bites. "I did warn you." Rashida smiled wryly as she swallowed the last of her chicken salad. "And as usual, you were correct. Speaking of which, we're going to the East Martello tomorrow, and then spending some time on the beach." "Damn, I was hoping to convince you to sign up for tomorrow's 1 p.m. dive." "Sunday," Hooray said. "I don't like diving 2 days in a row. Only reason we did today was because I wanted Azukar's shitty dive to stop being my last dive as soon as possible." I laughed. "Fair enough. I'll put you guys down for Sunday." Rashida got a mischievous smile. "Assuming William lets us." Hooray rolled her eyes. "I have created a fucking monster." At my confused look, she added, "She wanted to know what the big deal was about William the doll, so she looked his ass up on the internet last night, and now she won't shut up about him." "Come on," Rashida said. "It's fascinating. All the stories of people who received bad luck because they weren't polite to the doll? It's some bullshit is what it is." "Then why were you so eager to see him after hours?" "'Cause it's fun bullshit. I love that horror stuff." "So why aren't you letting me have fun with it?" Hooray hesitated, stared at her friend for about 4 seconds, then looked at me while pointing at her. "See what I gotta put up with?" "You could have changed roommates." Rashida still had the mischievous smile. I should have for damn sure moved in with Betsy Greer sophomore year. She wouldn't be getting all smug and shit." I chuckled as I finished my beer and signaled for the check. William the Doll's been a legend in Key West for ages. One of the rich clans on the island back around the turn of the 20th century was the Raymond family. They owned one of the cigar factories. The Raymonds had a kid, Eugene William Raymond. When he was 5, he wanted everyone to call him William because he hated the name Eugene. Then their housekeeper, who was Bahamian, made a life-size doll for him stuffed with straw. It became the kid's constant companion. He started calling the doll William and let people use his real first name after that. And anytime something went wrong or broke or whatever, he said, "William did it!" He kept the doll into adulthood, even though his wife hated it. She put it up in the turret in the building they lived in, and it supposedly kept moving around on its own. After Raymond died, the people who bought the house tried to get rid of the doll, but it kept reappearing. Eventually, it wound up in the East Martello Museum, and it's a big old tourist attraction. People are supposed to ask the doll's permission to take its picture, and if they don't, they're besieged by bad luck. Personally, I don't know why anybody would want to take a picture of the thing, as it's butt-fucking ugly. But tourists are weird. I was skeptical, but not for the reasons you might think. I've already mentioned my ghost roommate and the immortal regular at Mayor Fred's. That's just the beginning of the weirdness I've seen and dealt with since coming to Key West, including a dragon in the garden of the Bottroff house, a UFO, an attempt to bring out Ragnarok involving the ficus and Mayor Fred's, a serial-killing Nixie, a water fae whose son tried to marry Jaina, and a musician who sucked away people's souls. The reason why I've dealt with all this? I am a Dis, a Norse fate goddess. I know, it was a surprise to me too. But because of that, I didn't really buy the whole mystique around William the Doll. I mean, messing with people's lives is kind of my wheelhouse, and I've never seen any sign of William the Doll doing anything funky. Then again, I hadn't been to East Martello since just after the New Year. Hooray and Rashida joined me for another evening of pink-laden festivities at Mayor Fred's. Last night's outfit blew my wad as far as pink clothing went, so I just went with my usual t-shirt, a blue one that said, "I'm not arguing, I'm explaining why I'm right," shorts and flip-flops. Creepy Tony Stark didn't return, thank goodness, and nobody else got handsy, and everyone had a great time. Hooray actually flirted on the dance floor with Sal, a freighter captain who always came to Mayor Fred's when he was in town. I thought about warning Sal about her. He usually went for more timid women, and Hooray would probably eat him alive, but they drifted apart after a while, so it was probably just harmless dance flirting. Throughout, Rashida stayed with me at the table near the ficus, drinking cokes, people watching, and making sure Hooray was okay. The two of us had fun trying to figure out some of the more obscure costumes people were wearing. She recognized some anime characters that I didn't know, and I recognized some video game characters she didn't know. I had a misspent youth as a console gamer when I was in grad school. Once again, we stumbled back to the Bottroff house, with Rashida helping Hooray up the stairs once we got there. I had to admit, these two were fun. I was going to miss them when they went back to Chicago. I didn't see them Saturday, as they were off to East Martello, and I had another couple of dives to run, but we agreed to meet up Saturday night at Mayor Fred's. When I got there, 1812 was playing Twist and Shout. Hooray was sitting at the table at the ficus by herself. I frowned, confused, especially since there were 2 alcoholic beverages on the table. Hooray's usual margarita and a pink martini. As I squeezed through the throngs of pink-clad and costumed people to the table, I nearly stumbled in shock when I saw Rashida on the dance floor. "What the hell's going on?" I asked as I sat next to Hooray. "About time you showed up, Cassie. We were starting to get worried." "And I'm worried now. What's Rashida doing?" Hooray looked at me like I was nuts. In America, we call that shit dancing?" "Yeah, I know that, but why is she doing it? And since when does she drink?" "The hell are you talking about, Cassie? She's just being Rashida, like usual." I stared at her for a second. "She's Muslim. She doesn't drink." The word sounded stupid even as I said it, since Hooray had been her best friend and roommate for 7 years, and kind of sort of already knew that. In fact, Hooray was the one who told me both things about Rashida when they checked in 3 days ago. "I don't know what you're talking about." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Then 1812 finished Twist and Shout and started Devil with the Blue Dress, which I knew would be a medley that would also include Good Golly Miss Molly and Jenny Take a Ride. Hooray got up to to dance herself, leaving me alone with my confusion. Luckily, this medley almost always was a set ender, so with any luck they'd both come back to the table and I could try to figure this out. Adina came over and asked if I wanted my usual beer. Instead of answering, I pointed at the pink martini. "Adina, how many of those has Rashida had?" 3, I think. Same as last night and the night before. Why?" That tore it. In the year or so that I'd been on the island, I'd never seen Adina screw up a drinks order, and I had seen her remember what she served some random tourist 2 weeks earlier. If she was misremembering what Rashida had been drinking, that just had to mean there was something funky going on. Not only was I going to need to figure it out, I was going to have to do it alone, because whatever mojo was working was something that affected more than just Rashida and Hooray. It seemed to be affecting everyone. And only I could see through it. But then, that was you'll pardon the expression, my fate. A side effect of being a Dis is that I can see through artifice. The water fae I mentioned, I was the only one who could see what she really looked like. Which was a blessing for everyone else. She was fucking hideous. When Loki tried to bring about Ragnarok, I was the only one not captivated by his spell. Something had obviously happened to Rashida, and to everyone else around her. After the medley ended, they both came back to the table. Rashida trailing a guy wearing a pork pie hat, shades, and a bald cap. He was doing Heisenberg, Walter White's alter ego from Breaking Bad, and after a second I realized that it was the same guy who was doing Tony Stark 2 nights ago. He was saying, I was going to head over to the schooner wharf. You can see the ocean from there. Actually, the schooner wharf is on the Gulf of Mexico, I said tartly. He glared at me, then turned back to Rashida. We can keep dancing. Band there's even better than these guys. Oh, those were fighting words. Excuse me? Butt the fuck out, bitch, Creepy Stark, or rather Creepy Heisenberg, said. I'm talking to the lady. Rashida grinned, and I gaped, because I'd seen Rashida give shy smiles, and mischievous smiles, and wry smiles. In the 3 days of our acquaintance, I'd never seen her grin. And it was a lascivious, hungry grin that I'd seen on lots of people in this bar and on this island, but they were all serious partiers of a type Rashida most assuredly wasn't. Sounds good to me. Let's go. All right, Hooray said. Let's do this thing. She gulped down the rest of her margarita. At the same time, Rashida gulped down her pink martini. Then she stumbled. Creepy Heisenberg didn't even notice, but I did, and I jumped to steady her. Thanks, Cassie. I'm feeling a little woozy. That's what happens when you drink. She laughed. It wasn't the musical laugh I'd been hearing for 3 days. It was nasty and mean. I know, Cassie. It's hardly my first time. You want to come with us? Before I could say anything, Creepy Heisenberg said, Bitch face ain't invited. Don't worry, asshole. You couldn't pay me to go anywhere with you. I then looked at Hooray and Rashida. And you shouldn't either. Especially you, I said to Hooray. You were the one calling him handsy the other night. He's fine now. Besides, I always loved me some Walter White. Let's go, Hooray, Rashida said. Sorry, Cassie. We'll see you tomorrow at the dive. I followed them to the exit, not willing to let this go just yet. Wait a minute, you... Hooray stood between me and Creepy Heisenberg. No, you wait a minute. You ain't our fucking minder. Now we are going to the schooner wharf and your ass ain't invited. And they walked down Green Street toward Duval Street. I just kind of stood there with my mouth open. I had no idea what to do. Larry had also come outside to smoke a cigarette. What the hell was that all about? I shook my head. Fucked if I know. I turned to look at Larry, who was lighting up. You've seen me in here with those 2 women, right? Of course, Larry said. They've both been boozing and dancing and such. Both of them. You remember both of them boozing and dancing. It's what I said, isn't it? Larry asked testily. What would you say if I told you that Rashida doesn't drink, has never touched alcohol in her life until tonight, and spent the last couple of days here with me, sitting at the table, watching Hooray do all the dancing? Hooray's the colored girl? Larry asked. I just stared at him. What? That's what I always called them. I shook my head. Larry hadn't even made it into the late 20th century, much less the 21st. Anyhow, something's gone screwy since the last time I saw them. Then I winced. And I think I might know what. Larry, how much do you know about William the Doll? Larry took a puff. Well, I knew the Raymonds back in the day. Gene, he was nuttier than a fruitcake, I'll tell you that for free. Carried that stupid doll all over the place and always was blaming it for anything that ever went wrong in his life. I think he said William did it more often than he said hello. You ask me, it was nuts. What about all those stories about the doll? He shrugged. Well, most of it's nonsense, but I do know this much. Gene was more attached to that doll than was healthy. And whenever he did get away from it for any length of time, it was like he was a different person. Honestly, I kind of liked him better, but it never lasted. I needed to do something. Rashida was going to do something she'd regret. Hell, she already had just by having those 3 martinis. And if that asshat with the goatee had his way. But if I followed them to the schooner wharf, I'd just cause a scene. I yanked my smartphone out of my shorts pocket to do a double check on something in my email. Sure enough, Becky had sent me an email last week saying that she was doing ghost tours every day and night during Fest. It was partly to tell me why she wouldn't be diving during Fest, but she also sent her specific schedule, hoping to twist my arm into coming on the tour again. Like she needed the money this week. The tour took folks around the island on a big trolley, with one tour guide role-playing as a ghost. One of the stops was East Martello, where another tour guide took over, also acting as a ghost, giving some of the history of the museum, and a whole song and dance about William the Doll. Becky was doing the Martello part of the tour tonight, according to her email. That was my in. I said my goodbyes to a confused Larry, and went back to the Botroff house to retrieve my truck, then drove to the southern side of the island, where the museum was. The museum occupied a fort that had been commissioned during the Civil War by the North to protect Key West, which remained part of the Union even though most of the residents sympathized with the Confederacy, from naval attack by the South. But the fort was never finished, so it's an incomplete brick structure. The Key West Art and Historical Society took it over and made it a museum. I got there just as the ghost tour trolley was pulling out, so my timing was perfect. Parking the car next to the museum, I ran over to the side entrance where they brought the tour in, which led to the grass-covered grounds between the fort's outer wall and the main structure itself. I saw Becky standing on the ramp that led to the side entrance to William the Doll's display room, which was only used for the nighttime tours. She was wearing a facsimile of the outfit that Carl Tanzler dressed the corpse of his would-be lover, Maria Elena Milagro de Hoyos, in back in the 1930s. The door was partway open, and the museum interior was the only light source, so she was heavily backlit, which just heightened the frightening effect of what she wore. She turned around when she heard me approaching. "I'm sorry, we're closed." "Becky, it's me, Cassie." "Cassie? What the hell are you doing here?" "Hang on." She reached up and removed the contact lenses she was wearing, which made it look like she had the glass eyes that Tanzler had replaced De Hoyos' eyes with when the real ones decomposed. I'm not making that up. Tanzler kept De Hoyos' corpse in his house for a good decade or so after he died. In fact, he kept her so long, they couldn't convict him for desecrating her grave because the statute of limitations was up. Sick motherfucker was Tanzler. While she did that, I walked the rest of the way up the ramp. "I need to see the William exhibit." Becky just glowered at me through bloodshot eyes. Those contacts must have been murder. "Then you should have paid for a tour like everyone else." "Look, I'll pay you whatever the tour costs these days. It doesn't matter. I have to see the doll." "Cassie, you're freaking me out. What's going on?" "I think William may have done something to a friend of mine." Now she rolled those bloodshot eyes. "Come on, Cass, you don't really buy that stuff. I mean, yeah, for the tourists, we do that. All I know is a devout Muslim who's never touched alcohol in her life visited William this afternoon, and she's drunk at the schooner wharf right now." I wasn't about to get into the collective amnesia regarding her behavior. This was going to be hard enough to sell to someone who didn't know about my being a fate goddess. Becky was just staring at me. "Tell you what, I'll let you in for a minute, but only if you book an actual tour and bring at least 2 people with you." "Absolutely." "Has to be after Fest. Bookings go into the toilet first week of November." "Fine, just let me the fuck in, please." She pointed at my shorts. "Get on your phone and book it right now." "Becky, now." Who was I to argue with the ghost of Maria Elena de Magro de Hoyos? I went to the KWAHS site, booked a tour for 3 people. Worst case, I'd talk Bobby and Jaina into it, for the Tuesday after Fest ended. I showed her the display of my phone with the confirmation. "Happy?" "Very." She stepped aside and indicated the door with her hand. "Have fun." I walked into the room, which only had one bright light illuminating it. The centerpiece of the room was a glass case containing a 3-foot-high doll that looked like a little boy, dressed in a blue sailor suit, complete with billed cap. It looked like an albino with leprosy, to be honest. In an alcove behind the display case was what could only be called a shrine, a mess of letters and several pictures, all sent to William over the years. The last time I was here, 9 months ago, the doll gave me the absolute creeps. Now, I didn't know at the time that I was a Dees. Lots of weird shit had already happened to me, but I didn't have the first clue as to why. Thinking back on it now, I felt a presence in the doll, but at the time, I just chalked it up to everything that everyone was saying about the thing. And I mainly remember that now, because the presence I was feeling now was completely different. But the presence was familiar. Back in January, the presence was a lot of kind of sinister, kind of mean-spirited, more than a little mischievous. It was a lot like Loki, actually, very trickster-goddish. Now, though, it was more gentle, polite, reserved. Oh my fucking God. Behind me, Becky asked, "What is it?" I whispered at the doll. "Rashida?" The doll's head moved just a little bit. But the head moved just a little bit. The head moved just a tiny bit toward me. Fuck! I turned and ran out, practically knocking Becky down as I sprinted down the ramp and back to the truck. "What the hell, Cassie?" I ignored Becky's cries. I dashed out to Rocinante, turned her on, and slammed her into gear and terraced out of the gravel parking lot onto Roosevelt Boulevard. I zipped as fast as the truck and the other cars on the road would allow until I reached William Street. I pulled into the Schooner Wharf's parking lot and ran in, hoping that Hooray, Rashida, and Creepy Heisenberg were still there. They weren't. I searched fucking everywhere, including the restrooms, and nothing. I had a bad feeling that the male third of the group wanted to get at least one, if not both of them, somewhere private. I had no idea where he was staying, but I knew damn well where they were. Driving the truck back to the Botroff house, I found Hooray passed out on the couch in the lobby, snoring loud enough to wake the dead. This was not a good sign for Rashida. Or Rashida's body, anyhow. Luckily, I had a master key to every room, so I could just break in on Rashida climbing on top of Creepy Heisenberg, who had lost every part of his costume except for the goatee, which was obviously original parts, as it were. Rashida was only wearing a bra. "What the fuck?" the guy cried out, grabbing a pillow and covering his private parts. "Dude, seriously," I said. "You don't need to bother with the pillow. Your middle finger would do the trick." "Fuck you, bitch!" I could feel Rashida's eyes boring into me. "Cassie, what are you doing? This is private!" "Yeah, sitting in a display case all the time, I guess you really want all the privacy you can get, huh?" For a second, she just stared at me. Then she shook her head. "Damn it. I had a suspicion that you knew the truth by the way you were acting, but the spell has never failed before." First of all, it didn't fail. It worked on everyone else. But, let's just say that I'm immune to that sort of thing. Second of all, what do you mean before? Any answer to my question was cut off by the guy on the bed. "Will someone please explain to me what the fuck is going on here?" "Oh, be quiet, Dick." Rashida then gestured, and suddenly the guy fell asleep. I stared at her. "His name's really Dick?" Rashida nodded. "So should I call you William?" "Actually, my real name is Marguerite. I was born in the Bahamas in the year of our Lord, 1879. That stupid witch was angry because I was a better spellcaster than her. So she put me in that doll that she gave to the boy she kept house for." Rashida, or William, or Marguerite, or whoever, shook her head. "She was a servant in that house. It was absolute insanity that she lowered herself to that." "So you've been stuck in the doll since 1905. I was able to have some fun while young Eugene had me, but after he died it became difficult. More so when they put me in that ridiculous glass cage. But I eventually was able to gather up enough power to temporarily switch places with someone. It only lasts for one turning of the sun and moon, and I can only do it once per year. But as long as the spell lasts, I may act as I wish, and no one around me notices. Of late, I found it fun to come out at All Hallows. The celebrations are glorious, and there are many people who come to the island just for the festival. All they recall when it's done is that they had a glorious night of celebrating." "So what happens after one turning of the sun and moon? I'm guessing that's one day?" "Yes. Everything will return to normal come tomorrow." She sighed. "I'll be stuck in that damned doll again, watching idiots pass by and take their photographs. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to wake Dick up and pick up where I left off." I stepped forward. "I don't think so." Marguerite's version of Rashida's laugh was just nasty. "Being able to see through my spell doesn't empower you to stop it, Cassie." "I don't know about that, but I do know that you've already violated this woman enough. I'm not letting you keep it up." "Please. She's a young woman in Cayo Hueso for a bacchanal. I've possessed dozens. I'm doing nothing that they wouldn't already be doing." "Not Rashida. Probably not some of the others either, though there was certainly no shortage of women out to party hardy on the island, even normally, much less during fest. She doesn't drink, and she's not having sex until she's married." "How quaint. I haven't been a virgin in almost 30 years. Nonetheless," Marguerite tried to move toward Cassie, but then she hesitated and put a hand to her head. I don't I don't feel well. I'm not surprised. I told you, Rashida doesn't drink. She never had alcohol until you put some in her. She's got no tolerance. It doesn't matter. Oh! Now she doubled over in pain. Oh, fuck. I moved quickly to stand next to her and steady her. What is happening to me? Could be anything. Could be alcohol poisoning, could be something else. You need to leave her body, and I need to get her to a hospital. No! The spell must run its course. Fine, then I'll just take you to the hospital. But either way, no! No men of medicine, they will kill me. I sighed. Doctors have gotten a little better since the 19th century. Rashida's body then doubled over completely, and she threw up all over the carpeted floor. I winced. Lisa Karen was going to go apeshit. Nothing she hated more than cleaning puke out of the carpets. Gods below, this hurts! Only one way to make the pain go away, Marguerite. I will not... Oh! Then her stomach constricted and she threw up some more. Sorry, I can't hear you over the sound of you puking. She looked up at me. Her eyes were even more bloodshot than Becky's had been. Are you enjoying this? Not in the least, I said seriously. You're hurting my friend. Please stop now. After giving me a murderous look, she said, Very well. It was going so well until you interfered. Then her eyes rolled back in her head, and she went totally limp in my arms. Luckily, scuba diving has given me excellent upper body strength. It helped that Rashida's 5'2" and weighed basically nothing. I supported her entire weight, then placed her gingerly on the bed, sitting her up in case she needed to throw up again. As I pulled a sheet over her legs and torso, Dick started to rouse. What the fuck's going on? I moved to his side of the bed and loomed over him. You're leaving, Dick. Now. He rubbed his temples with his fingers. No, seriously, what the fuck's going on? What's going on is you're getting your ass out of my B&B. I pointed to the door. Move, or I call the cops. All right. Dick grabbed his clothes and ran out the door. I wondered if he bothered putting them on before going back to wherever he was staying. It being Fest, I also wondered if anybody would notice. Probably not. Cassie? Came a ragged voice from the door. I turned to see Hooray standing in the doorway, looking like hammered shit. Quickly, I walked to the door and guided her into the room, closing the door behind her. What's that smell? Rashida's puke, nothing to worry about. Okay. I put her to bed next to Rashida. She was snoring again in half a second. I ran out to the cleaning closet and got some carpet cleaner and bleach wipes, and then did the best I could to clean up the worst of the puke. I left a note warning Lisa Karen she'd work her mojo to clean it completely in the morning. Once I did the best I could with the carpet, I turned the light out and let them sleep in peace. I asked Captain Botroff to keep a ghostly eye on them. If anything went wrong, he'd wake me and let me know. Rashida probably puked out the worst of it out of her system, but if she showed any sign of ill effects, I'd take her to the hospital like I'd threatened Marguerite with. However, they slept peacefully through the night, and the next morning, they only had vague recollections of their Saturday. I saw them at breakfast in the garden for the first time. Every other day they'd gotten up before me, but Sunday they slept as late as I usually did. Debbie Delamonica, the owner of the Botroff house, kept Hawaiian Kona coffee, and all three of us were clutching mugs of it around one of the metal tables. Hooray was saying, One of us puked. I know. Who do you think cleaned it up? I asked, amused. Rashida winced. We're sorry, Cassie. Which of us was it? I decided it was best to keep my role in last night's shenanigans vague. All I can say for sure is that there was corn in it. Me then, Rashida said. I must have eaten something that disagreed with me. It isn't the first time I've gotten that kind of food poisoning. Yeah, I said quickly. That was probably it. Would you be horribly hurt if we begged off the dive today? Neither of us are up to it. No problem, I said. They stayed through to the end of Fest and took one more dive with me before they checked out and flew home to Chicago. Meanwhile, I made sure to take a drive over to the East Martello Museum. I paid my admission and walked through the exhibits of Civil War paraphernalia and sculptures and bits of Key West history and went to the William the Doll exhibit. I stood and stared at that ugly-ass little doll in the glass case. The presence was the same as it was when I'd been here in January, and the same as it was when I confronted Marguerite. Bitter, miserable, nasty. I just want you to know, I whispered to the doll, that you're done. You see, I'm a Dis, a fate goddess. And I happen to know that your fate is to be stuck in that doll for the rest of eternity. That doesn't come with vacation time. So just know that as a fate goddess, I'm affirming that fate. Consider your door closed. It sure looked to me like the doll started frowning. Probably just a trick of the light. Mind you, I had no idea if I could actually keep Marguerite's door closed. Being a Dis didn't come with an instruction manual, so I bluffed out my eyeballs. Either way, though, she wasn't going anywhere for a year in any case. And next fest, I'd be waiting. As I walked out of the room, I tripped and stumbled forward. Whirling around, I looked back. Now it looked like the doll was smiling. A museum volunteer walked up to me. "Are you all right, ma'am?" I waved her off. "Yeah, sorry, I just tripped. I'm not usually that clumsy." "I understand." She gave the display a conspiratorial grin. "William did it." The end. As I said at the beginning, you can get this story in A Baker's Dozen of Magic, edited by Jessica Bronner, which is available online from Amazon and other book dealers. Eventually, I'm going to be doing a second collection of Cassie Zukav stories, which will be called Ragnarok in a Hard Place. Once I have enough additional stories for a collection. I'm almost there. William Did It will be in there, as well as a bunch of others that have appeared in various places. If you go to my website at DeCandido.net, there is a link to my blog, which is decandido.wordpress.net. You can just go straight there. There's a pinned post that has a link to a guide to all of Cassie's fiction and links to ordering all of them. So you can find that there. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you subscribe to the channel. Please check me out at decandido.net or decandido.wordpress.com. I also have a Patreon. Go to patreon.com/KRAD, K-R-A-D, and support me. I do lots of stuff that I see on there. You can go online and buy my books. And thank you very much for watching. And please stay safe. Thank you.